There's an old Buddhist teaching image, parable, about students and teachers. So, comparing students to a cup. You have one type of student who is like an upside down cup. And if you pour tea on an upside down cup, it just, of course, it cannot go into the cup. Nothing enters. The student is closed. The student is inattentive and not listening. The second is a dirty cup, the right way up, but maybe it's filled with mud or oat tea, or perhaps you're making tea and the cup is filled with coffee. The student is afflicted, right? Blocked with preconceptions or pride. So what enters? The teachings are entered and they are spoiled by the content. My sense of being better than a practice that requires you just to play one at a time, for example. The third type of student is a leaky cup. You pour in, but there are holes and it comes out like a sieve. So the teachings come in, but they don't stay. They come out the other side. There's no practice. The teachings are in, but only once a week do you sit down with your teacher and you don't do the hard work of practicing. Only when the vessel is upright, clean, and whole can the teachings go in and be received, be maintained, be sustained.
Et à partir d'ici, que ça s'inscrive simplement, non pas dans la musique, mais par un coup du génie, dans l'immortalité.
I went to London for the year as a junior on an exchange program. So I'd always intended to do this. I grew up in England, moved to the States just in time to begin high school. So I always knew that I would go as a junior to London. But I didn't do real well when I was there. I showed up and I avoided sort of the formal student services. I just kind of showed up to classes in the music department. I was staying at a university residence in Camberwell, which is near the Phoenix and Firkin pub above the Denmark Hill train station. I think the residence is still there. I haven't checked to see if the pub or, in fact, the train station is still there. We'd all ride in on British Rail, get off at Blackfriars on the other side of the Thames. And then, although there was a tube that would take you from Blackfriars to, I think, Temple was the station, as often as not, I would walk along the river, or maybe take 20 minutes. I would smoke a cigarette and enjoy walking along the Thames. It was an impossibly romantic time or image, impossibly romantic potential. In retrospect now, 35 years later, I wish I'd taken that year in a foreign language program, and instead there was a program from Bates to Strasbourg through the French department. I would have strengthened my French. I would have still been able to study music, and I probably would have learned to drink with more moderation. Instead of buying these bottles of cheap, I think it was Hungarian wine, then just plopping the cork open with my keys and drinking it. Now, at the time, also in the college residence over there in Camberwell, I made friends with an English major. He knew I was struggling to get my bearings. He knew I was hanging around with some dudes who drank too much. He knew more about me than I did. He was a kind, generous person who introduced me to his mother, who is quite a famous pianist. I told her that I'd gone to my assigned lessons at the Royal College of Music. Is that right? Over in the Barbican? Maybe it was Guildhall. Don't worry, it was one of the schools that I was not good enough as a pianist to get into. But King's College, which was the university I had gone to, had an arrangement where they outsourced their studio teachings. So I went there. I can't quite remember the name of the teacher. I only had a couple of sessions with him. Giles, someone. He was older. He smoked while I was playing. I was playing Beethoven's Tempest. And if you know that piece, you know there's some boom, there's some big bass notes in the opening. Not the actual introduction, but once the theme starts. And I beat the hell out of it. And he jumped up and looked inside his piano as if this brutish American had taken a hammer, smashed up his piano. And he also farted all the time, while I was playing. So he farted, he smoked. He thought I was a lout. And I mentioned this to my friend, who was I mentioned he was kind and generous. He was also a musician in his own right, as a singer. Anyway, he introduced me to his mother. And I took lessons from her while I was there. And she also had me practice the Cortot exercises. So let me think. I was in London for an academic year, September until May, which is astonishing how little time that really is. And yet at the time, it felt like an eternity. But it wasn't easy to find practice space, and I just wasn't taking it that seriously. I wasn't taking myself too seriously. I had developed a taste for drink, but my friend's mother took me on. This untutored, erratic boy. It must have been entirely as a favor to her son. Was I usually drunk? No, but I was for sure hungover and dirty. I would take the Northern Line out from Elephant and Castle to, is it called High Barnet? It's Thatcher's constituency. Anyway, we met according to her schedule. She was busy. She traveled a lot. She was concertizing. So let's say I met twice a month. We didn't start out at first because I still had to get past farting, smoking dude. So I started in October. There was a winter break. So maybe for 6 months total, 12 lessons total. And yet here I am, I can still remember those lessons. Let's say for each of those lessons, I eked out a couple of hours practice either in the basement of the dormitory I was staying. The residents had a piano in the basement, an upright. Or sometimes in the King's College Music Building, which you couldn't practice while there were classes going on because it was basically a house. Right? It was a row house. It was cramped anyway. So again, if I was serious, I would have just stayed late and practiced and then gone home, had dinner, slept, woken up, gone early, practiced. Anyway, my friend's mother told me to practice the last 8 measures of the first movement of the Tempest Sonata slowly. It says pattern. Practice it with changing rhythmic patterns. So instead of just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, practice it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Just different. So you emphasis. It lined in very nicely with the Cortot. And I still remember her saying, practice exactly this way. She said, I will know if you don't. So she would assign me work in each of the Cortot chapters. And in fact, those are the numbers that are on the cover that I still have.